What's up, guys? This week on Joint of the Week, we're going to do a through wedge mortise and tenon. This is a beautiful piece of joinery that works really well in furniture. Really, anytime you have a mortise and tenon, it's a great way to make it very decorative. And there's lots of ways that you can vary the look. You can vary the direction of the wedge, or you can use a contrasting piece of wood to help kind of showcase the joint. It's a Japanese style joint, and I think I'm going to show you a pretty easy way to do it. We're going to make our wedge go down vertically, which I think is probably my favorite look, and we're going to cut a really cool wedge and give some detail to the piece. So let's get started over on the drill press. So we have three components to this joint. We have your mortise material. This would be like the leg in your furniture. We have our tenon material. This would be like the stretcher, and then we have our wedge material. Now I'm using contrasting woods, so at the end we can see where everything is and how it works together. What woods you choose, that's going to be up to you. So we need to do some calculating here. Our tenon material is going to go through our mortise material, and our wedge is 1/2 inch wide. We are going to drill a hole through the mortise that leaves enough stick out that we can stick our wedge in, have it be decorative. We can chamfer these edges, and so we need to calculate that. And so what we do is we figure out the width of our leg piece. So that's 1 3/4. And so this we know needs to stick through at least 1 3/4. I'm going to want my wedge, which is going to go through here, to take up about half the space, and then the stick out take up about half the space. So I'm going to have my wedge be about 1/2 inch deep, and so I want this to stick out 1 inch. So we need to go back 2 3/4. That's going to be the shoulder of our tenon. So that's really easy to do. You can take a pair of calipers or a ruler and set it to 2 3/4, and then you can take a marking gauge and use it to lay out your shoulder by taking your calipers just like this. We'll verify that, make sure that that's 2 3/4. It's almost. There we go. So now that we have that at 2 3/4, we're going to mark out the shoulder of our tenon. And this doesn't have to be too dark right now, because you can darken it up with your marking knife. But we just want to get a reference area. Make sure that lines up all the way around. Okay, so now we know that the shoulder of our mortise is going to come to here, just like that. Now what we need to do is mark out where our tenon is going to come through. We know that our mortise is going to stick through 1 3/4, so I'm going to just mark that out roughly, because we don't really care, we just kind of want to know where it is. So that's where our board is going to be. And so when we do our mortise, what we want to do is go back just a little bit so that we don't overshoot. We're going to do it like that. So the way I'm going to lay that out, so I have here a 1/2 inch Forstner bit, which is, as you can see, the same width as our wedge material. And so I want to identify a center line, because the tip of that Forstner bit is going to register in that center line. We know that we want it 1/2 inch past the wedge, so we can mark that out with our marking knife, and we'll do it on a fresh side here. We'll mark it with a pencil first here. So that's where our mortise is going to finish. And we know we need to go back at least 1 inch, if not, we'll call it 1 1/8 inches, just so that we make sure we're totally embedded in the mortise, in the leg. So we need to go back at least to there. So we're going to drill out this area and then chop it out with a chisel. And so we need to identify a center line in our piece for our Forstner bit to register in. So we're at 1.3 here, which is going to be 0.65 will be our center line, and you could easily do that with a ruler as well. I just find calipers make it a lot easier. So then I'm going to identify that center line there, make sure we're correct. Yep. So that's going to be a perfect point for our Forstner bit to register in when we're clearing out material. And because we're going to be roughly 1/2 inch, it's going to be easy to clear out that material. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to make these lines sharper across. This one you can go all the way across, because it's going to be buried inside your mortise. You'll never see it, so you can be a little bit darker with that. And then for this guy, we're going to measure out 1/4 inch from each side of our line, just like this. And then you can darken that up. and that's going to give you a stopping point for your mortise. Same thing over here. And you can see why I do this where I hold the marking knife and then slide the square up to it in the Essential Skills for Woodworkers series. I'll put a link here in the corner. And so now we've marked out our wedge hole. Go ahead and darken this line up as well. So now we're going to clear out this area right here, and we're going to do this very simply by using a Forstner bit to clear out a majority of the waste and then using a chisel to cut out the rest. And remember, our shoulder line's all the way back here, so this area in here is going to be buried in the mortise. So we're going to clear out this area first, then we're going to go cut our mortise and then fit the tenon to it. We want our wedge material to fit in this hole first, then we cut our mortise into our leg piece, and then we fit our tenon to it. I find that way you get a lot more accurate results. So let's clear out this waste. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and transfer these lines to the other side so that we have a square reference on both sides to chop to. So and this is really easy because you can essentially just take your marking gauge and set the wheel in the marking knife line you created before, snug it up, tighten it up, and you're right in the same line. And this gives us a great knife line for the other side. And this will be the bottom side. There we go. And this one doesn't matter because this is buried in the mortise anyways, but just give me a reference area to stop at. Okay, let's get to chopping. Okay, so we have the mortise for our wedge cut out. We paid very close attention to this edge and these two edges to make sure they were parallel and square. And now we're going to go ahead and cut our mortise. And our mortise is going to be a 1 inch by 1 inch square mortise. So we're going to head over to the drill press and cut that out with a Forstner bit. When you're cutting a mortise, remember the inside doesn't matter very much because the shoulder of your piece is going to cover it. So as long as your shoulder is square, the inside can be just ugly as you want. You want to just pay very close attention that you do the outside of it right. And all you need to do is get that 1 inch by 1 inch square perfectly marked out and cut with a marking knife line. As long as you don't go over those marking knife lines, you're going to be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this out and then we'll head over to the drill press. It's time to set the distance with a stop block to the edge of our cheek and not move it. We're going to be using this, the Katz Moses no deflection stop block on pre-sale on my website. When you're measuring, it's important to measure from the outside of your piece, the show side of your piece. And it seems counterintuitive, but that's where you want it to fit. The inside you can adjust. The inside doesn't matter because it's going to get covered by the cheeks. So you want to make sure that the end of your tenon is fitting into the outside portion of your mortise on this. And so we're going to go ahead, now that we have our height set, we're going to set our stop block and cut this out, and then we're going to adjust the height for the other side and get everything fitting really well. All right, we've got everything fitting up nice. It's time to cut our wedge and then get everything sanded up and put together. The reason you want your tenon to fit so tightly is that you're gonna have to sand it just a little bit, take the saw marks out. And so you don't wanna leave those if you can avoid it. And if you sand it, obviously you're gonna make it smaller. So you want it to be fitting really nice and tight before you go into your final finish. So we're gonna go ahead and cut our wedge, get everything sanded up and put it together. Whoa, that came out good. I am so happy. So this is actually called a tusked mortise and tenon. It's when you stick a wedge in from the top. It's called a tusked mortise and tenon, just for you guys playing the home game. Really great joint. This thing looks so cool. I love the way it just sucks everything up super tight, so you get no gaps. Everything's super tight, really clean joinery. No clamps whatsoever. There's no glue in this whatsoever. And one thing I would suggest is whatever you use for your wedge, make sure it's softer than your tenon board, because one or the other is going to give, and you want it to be your wedge when you start pounding things home. I love this look. I'm going to use this on some furniture. Guys, stay safe in the shop. I will not do a butt joint, and have a wonderful day.